Hey everyone, this is Isaac Smolden, the production manager here at My House. This episode of My Voice is part 2 of a 2-part series with one of our former clients who is now a staff member. If you haven't listened to part 1, it is My Voice episode 5, Accountability Part 1. Go back and take a listen to it and then come back and listen to this episode. Without any further ado, here is My Voice episode 6, Accountability Part 2. My Voice is a chance for those who have struggled with addiction, homelessness, depression, and domestic violence to have a candid conversation about their life experience, current situation, and future goals and aspirations. Every episode is conducted anonymously to facilitate a comfortable and safe place for guests to tell their story. My Voice is hosted by Mike Sisson, who works as a case manager at the My House facilities in Wasilla, Alaska. We now join a My Voice conversation, already in progress.
What happened the day you got trespassed?
I remember vividly that I had a big box of clothes along with like a couple duffel bags. And when I say big box, I mean like, big. Like I'm 90 something pounds at this point. I can't carry that. I have to push it out the door with my duffel bags, I had someone else with me. I don't remember. But Justin was like new and they had him. Now he's one of my biggest supporters, but at the time I hated him. They had him serve me with the trespass or whatever, and I made the biggest scene I can remember in this place. Like, and I had made some scenes at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
I just felt like at this place, I remember talking crap to other people, I'm going to go to my house. Oh, so that place ain't nothing, because I was so angry, I wasn't trying to get help. I was still, I think part of me, because after OCS takes your kids, no matter where you lie within that, whether or not you, some people get them taken and it doesn't faze them. I know people who are addicts who they just continue to go do their thing, and it doesn't really, then they continue to have kids and it's a repetitive cycle. It doesn't really faze them. For me, after being told that you're a crappy mom for so long, you start to second guess if you're really a good mom. And that kept me sick for a long time because I am a great mom.
Mm-hmm.
I love with my whole heart. My kids are my everything. And when they were taken in OCS, no matter what, and people look at you different when you have OCS involvement. They
sure
treat
do.
you different.
Mm-hmm.
They automatically assume that you're a crappy mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's stuck. And so I think part of me wanted to feel that. Part of me wanted and felt like I deserved to feel all the pain I was feeling. Even though I didn't deserve it. So I stayed on that path for a while. Good old another couple years. Then got on felony probation as an adult. It was real then. It didn't matter though, because it was a part of that life. You got in trouble. Boo-hoo. Like, you do what you do. You either go on the run or you deal with what you got to deal with. But, like, the only time I ever went on the run, I lasted, like, 2 weeks. And that's because I stayed in Wasilla. When I came back to Palmer, I got arrested again. But so I did the whole missing court dates or, making up excuses. And
This is after you were trespassed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just now you're like full spiraling at this point.
Yeah. I got kidnapped one other time specifically, and I got hung upside down by a tow chain, and the crap beat out of me, and that one was a power trip. Like, this girl, she didn't like me. I've always been strong-willed, and she didn't like me. This other dude, her justification was this other dude stole an Apple Watch from her, and I traded it to my friend because I was like, look, I don't even have like, dude gave it to me, and I traded it to my friend, you know, quote, friend, because I thought that was my friend, not knowing that it was stolen from her. I hadn't even seen the girl for like over a year, and well, the dude that gave it to me had stolen it from her, so she used that as justification to do what she did, and I was there for like 3 or 4 days. She made me clean her house, you know, and watch her kids so she could go shoot up heroin, and then, you know, hung me upside down by a toe chain and beat the crap out of me, cut my hair, drew on my face and humiliated me, you know, would make me watch her shoot up heroin and blame me, saying because I shot up around her, it made her the way she is. It was my fault.
Gosh.
And then waved a pistol around my face and said that she was going to protect me from someone who was trying to also kidnap me, as she's waving a pistol around in my face. And in the midst of me being transported from that location to another location, so someone else could deal with me, I ended up getting away. And then I started staying, then I ended up going back to jail because in the process of that I missed court, and I got out. I had like 12 days sober. I'm going to do it, right? But I got back out and went to the trap house.
Mm-hmm. You didn't have anything else really at that point?
Nope. My stuff had been stolen so many times, you know. You
had no support. You'd been,
no.
I mean, you'd been in that lifestyle for a minute now.
My dad, like early on in my addiction, had moved back down to Washington. And I still to this day, like still in that moment had not, because I'm a daddy's girl. Like, he's my best friend. I tell him everything, like, and I didn't want to disappoint him. So still at that point, I never told him anything that had happened, and that I was an addict. He knew when he left. I went from being my normal size to like 112 pounds. Like,
sure.
But I wasn't really too ready to accept that. We used to live behind McDonald's in Palmer, and in the beginning of when I was shooting and stuff, and I had been up for like a week, and I was supposed to go visit my ex in jail, and because of previous stuff that had happened to us, he made me promise that I was going to get sober, and I didn't. And so I had a friend tell me that if I did heroin, that if I shot up a little bit of heroin, it would kind of balance me out, and I wouldn't look like my eyes were the size of quarters, and, you know, because I didn't want my ex to know that I was still using when I visited him. So, well, that person ended up giving me a hot shot, and it took 9 Narcan kits to revive me.
And just to clarify, what is a hot shot?
A shot with enough dope to kill you, with intent to kill you.
The person who gave you the hot shot, was there motive behind?
I was selling dope. There was a lot of dope on me.
So you got Narcan 9 times. Yep.
They had to input some of them into my knee and then a bunch up my nose. At that point, I was lying to my ex, saying that I was hustling as an excuse to get his bail money. But in all reality, I fell in love with the game. I fell in love with being a female selling dope, the somewhat respect it gave you, you know, when a bunch of fiends want what you have. In the beginning, it was fun. It was a good time. The adrenaline rush. Then when all that stuff started happening, I went from selling to very much actively using, and then quit selling and just heavy into addiction.
So now you're at the hospital, I'm guessing. Narcan 9 times.
Officer Mullenberg in Palmer, who also arrested me for my very first charge as an adult. One of my biggest supporters today too. She was actually the officer. I hated her. I was like, because she arrested me and all that stuff, but in that moment I was so traumatized. I had been held at Matsui Regional before against my will, and like held down and like injected with stuff to just make me fall asleep, and restrained, and I have bad trauma from there. And even though I just died, I begged her not to take me back there. She's like, Carly, if you don't go back there, you're going to die. You have enough heroin in your system. You're going to re-OD.
Mm-hmm.
So I begged her and the paramedics to, stay there with me.
Mm-hmm.
And the paramedics, I forget who they are, but they couldn't. And they said that they're like, we can't, we'll come back and we'll check on you. And they did. And up until I was released.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that feeling because I got given a shot to kill me, but the doctor treated me as if, he's like, well, once you get out of here, just make sure you're careful, all this stuff, right? He was treating me like I was a heroin addict, and I was trying to explain to him that I'm a meth addict. I'm not a heroin addict. He's like, well, that's not what the tox screen says.
Right. No, and there's a difference. Like, there is a big difference.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that. But when a doctor is like,
You see this stuff on the regular.
kind of condescendingly telling you, look, when you go back out and you start using again, there is a big difference between using those two specific drugs. So It's important for people to know that about you, in not just at the hospital, but just in life, like in your story. Like,
yeah, I've done other things.
Sure.
I've tried a lot of things, but that's not what I'm in recovery from. And when I say I'm in recovery from that life, not
Yes.
just the drug, because the adrenaline seeking, the toxic habits, I would get out of jail and it was more comfortable for me to go to a trap house where it was totally dysfunctional than to come in here where it was safe.
Mm-hmm.
It was comfortable to be in that dysfunction. Anyway, so back to...
Yeah, so you're at the hospital. You obviously recover.
Yeah.
You get released again
Yeah.
to go back out into the world. Now what?
So that was actually towards the beginning of me shooting. I jumped back a little bit. So now jumping back to where I was, after the second time of being kidnapped and stuff, I go back out. That got me sober for a couple weeks, and then I was like, no, because I was terrified. I was terrified to go out.
Yeah.
So, and then the drug called me more than the scared of, seeking or seeing those people, so I go back out, and in the midst I go to jail a couple more times for missing court and getting a warrant. And, the last time I went to jail one other time. So I went to jail and then I got out and I went to my friend Josh's, and, he was one of my best friends. We're over in Willowa. We were staying in a trailer. The night before, we had talked about getting sober. He has kids, I missed my kids, and I knew, even though I didn't know what it looked like to be in my kids' lives, I knew that where I was going, I was either going to end up dead, or, there was going to be no way I was going to see them.
Mm-hmm.
We had talked about getting sober, and I knew Josh since before I ever did drugs. He was like a big brother, and the next day he was shot and killed, and I got shot, and I went to the hospital. It happened so fast. Like, a lot of people would say, oh, you're just paranoid. That whole night before, I was like, something's off. Like, normally there was a bunch of people, they're like ants on an anthill, like in Willowa.
Mm-hmm.
Like, normally there was a bunch of people walking around. There was, it was, and the atmosphere was off. And me and you have had conversations about this, about
Mm-hmm.
discernment and my gut feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
in one of those, in that moment, I had a feeling that something was off. Well, nobody believed me, and I tried to tell Josh, and he kind of felt it, but not enough. I had been through a lot of kidnappings and stuff before, so I was like, I know that something's up.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get high within that, within that whole night. I knew I needed to sleep, so I was like, I knew that something was off. And the next day comes, and then the shooting happens, and there's definitely multiple situations in my testimony where I'm like, if I would have listened
to that gut feeling.
Yeah, but so that happened, and I went to the hospital, and I got sober. I ended up going and staying with my friend for like 2 weeks, and I got sober during that time period. And at this point, we didn't have the Lazarus Project. We didn't have, True North didn't have as many buildings as they have now. It might have still been Fiend to Clean at the time. I'm not sure. So like there was not by any means as much resources as we have now, or as many resources as we have now. And so I remember I was waiting on a bed at Erning Turner, and we worked so hard to get my assessment to be a higher level, because they assessed me at a lower level, but because of me just getting shot and stuff, I'm like, I need somewhere safe. I'm not going to stay sober if you leave me in the same environment, So we waited and we waited and we waited, and there was no beds and no beds and no beds. And I was away in Anchorage. I ended up coming back out here, and I knew on the flats, on the hay flats, I dreamed about it. I knew about it the whole night before. I couldn't sleep because I knew I was coming back out to Anchorage, and I came back out to the valley. And as soon as I got back out to the valley, the first place I went was a trap house. And then that 2 weeks, felt so far away. And but I got a taste of sobriety, and I got good connections at that point, and I got my sober support. Shout out to Mark Weaver, and then I started building my team. So a couple more relapses. I was out there for a couple more months. Then I went to jail, because my PO was like, you can either get sober or you can, go to jail. And I went to Sarah's house in Palmer. Great program. I was not ready for it. I wasn't ready to hear about God. I wasn't ready to hear, Bible studies. I wasn't ready. I needed a safe place to stay and to abide by my probation, and that was it. I wanted to be ready so hard, though. I remember making a Facebook post and telling everybody, this is what I'm doing, and this is where I'm going to be at. So if I don't answer my phone, this is what's up. Well, I left there, went to the women's shelter, stayed there for the 90 days or whatever. In the midst of that, I stayed twice at my, another one of my sober supports houses, and she lived all the way in the Butte, so it was perfect because I wasn't near anywhere. If it was close enough for me to walk to get high, I would go. I even walked from Palmer to Wasilla, but from the Butte, no, you got me messed up.
Right. Not walking that far.
No. So there's all that, right? At this point, my PO is like, okay, look, you need to get into treatment. And so I had caught another charge while I was in Anchorage hanging out with, because I was sober, but I wasn't, I hung around friends that weren't sober.
Yep. Same group of friends, just not using.
So I ended up catching another charge, which ended up getting dismissed. But for a period of time, I had a PED officer PO and a felony probation officer PO. And both of them, I've still called and checked in and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. And they're, so Preeby and IMO, if you hear this, thank you. But IMO was that pain in the butt that he was so annoying. He was that dad type person that was like, you better do this. And I was like, you tell me to do this is making me not want to do it. But that tough love, I ended up successfully completing my probation, got my SIS, my other charges was dismissed. In the midst of that, I started working at Chevron.
You also were untrespassed during that time.
I needed a safe place to stay after the shelter, so I came in here, and they had a house lead position available, and I stayed there for a year and a half. Once I started working here as a staff member, I realized real quick I don't want to go home to the same clients that I see every day.
Right.
So there's just no boundary there. So I ended up, finding my boyfriend at the time had this, it all worked out so well. Like, can I talk about God on here? Like,
Yeah, talk about your story. Absolutely.
So in the midst of all this, I found my faith, and I am a strong believer in Jesus Christ, and my now husband, great man, the happiest I've ever been. I told him, I was like, man, I'm worn down. Like, I don't want to live at this house. I'm so unhappy. I want to be helpful, and I don't feel like I'm being helpful living in the same house that I go to work at with these girls. Because then I'm just snappy on them, and I'm, and he ended up having a roommate at the time, and they found somewhere else. But there was a apartment that he got a call back for. It all just worked out. It was definitely God's plan. Like, our landlord's a believer, and so everywhere I go, there's believers surrounding me. My landlord's a believer. My husband and I got married, and he's a believer. We're expecting a child.
It's all right.
We're expecting a beautiful baby boy, and both of us get a parent to him, and that's exciting for us. I've never been so happy. I have a job that I love, that I get to give back to people, like coworkers that are family, like, if I'm struggling, I can come to every single person. Maybe not Isaac. No, just kidding. But to every single person in this office and be like, yo, I'm having a rough time.
Reunited with two of your kids and back in your life.
I see my middle son at church, like, I have faith that one day I'll be able to at least be a part of my youngest two's lives, but, and then I have a +1 child, like, I have a beautiful stepson, and his mom's a sweetheart, and, like, I never thought I would be in a situation to be the stepmom, but I'm so glad that his mom is who she is. Like, she's such a sweetheart. There's no, like, tension, I feel. There's no, like, God's hand is in everything in my life, and I'm so grateful. Today, God says, you can be happy, So even on the rough days, like, I love my job. I love what I do. I love that I get to be a mom. The years that the locust stole, he's given back, And it's not always what we picture, Like, if I would have had it my way, I would still be where I was at, if not worse.
Oh, yeah. So at one point you were working at Chevron. You got a job at Chevron. Tell me how you ended up working here.
So I worked at Chevron for like 8 or 9 months, and that in itself was the longest I had ever held a job, because even before drugs, like, I felt like I was too good to work something, like McDonald's. I did, but it never lasted long. I never felt purpose. When I worked at Chevron, I was fresh out of, like, I was doing really well on my probation, working, being the house lead. Like, I had goals at that point. I was like, this is not where I want to be, but this is it's going to get me somewhere. So I stayed, and I showed up, and I worked harder than everyone, that I saw. And I ended up getting a bunch of hours for somewhere that's only a part-time job. I earned my 40 hours, and then I still showed up here, and I did, the youth advisory board, and checked in with people about housing, and within that one of the youth advisory board meetings, there was Michelle's like, you need to tell your lived experience. You need to share what would have helped you. And so I did, and an agency that really helped me through my adult life, with my OCS stuff, even though I didn't get my children back into my custody, they were supportive, and they helped, was Alaska Youth and Family Network. Like, they have adult navigators for your family, and I said something like that, but for our youth. That's what we need. We need people who, case managers can't always leave the building to go, and then the clients are stuck in limbo, waiting on someone else to come in, maybe someone from another agency, or, and there's just a lot that gets missed because it can't get done, was like, we need that support for our clients. And then, you know, it got brought up a couple more times, and then I didn't hear anything about it. And then, like, I want to say like 6-7 months later, Michelle's like, hey, I have a position for you. And I'm like, what? And she kind of explains it. And so she hired me on. And then I didn't even make the connection that she created the position for that I had mentioned in the youth advisory board until she was me, her, and another person. We're all having a conversation over the phone, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I talked about," like, which was super cool because a part of a huge mission of our youth advisory board is that we want our clients to feel heard. You know, we want them to feel important, and the impact that had on my life, that my voice mattered, you know, to where it actually got me somewhere, you know, it actually is making a difference in clients' lives. Like, and Michelle picked me for that. That felt so good. And then they decided to keep me around. So I've been, you know, I ended up giving, which I've never in my life given a 2-week notice before, ever, you know, and I actually ended up giving like a month notice to Chevron, and I still love my old boss over there, and, you know, they treated me good while I was there, you know, but I did it all right this time, you know, and I showed up for work when I needed to be here. I love my job. I've never felt purpose at a place before, you know. My Mondays don't feel like Mondays, you know, and this now is the longest I've ever held a job, and I'm excited to build a career out of it.
So let me just do this. You are an amazing person. Your story is incredible, to say the least. Let me just recap here and just say back to you. You were at one point a IV meth user, trespassed from this place, nowhere near getting any help or hope that anything was going to change in your life, in and out of jail, to today a peer support staff over female housing, married to an amazing man in the community, reunited with 3 out of the 5 kids that you get to see, correct? Out of the 5 that were initially...
So 4 biologically are mine. 5th one in my tummy. My youngest, I've seen him out in the community, but not, I don't get visits or anything like that right now. My middle son, I see at church occasionally, but I get to have overnights and spend time with my oldest too, and it just reaffirms my faith when it comes to my youngest too, you know, because just like their adopted parents saw that I was doing well and that I've changed my life, like so will the others, and I believe that wholeheartedly, even if that means that they're so young that I'm not mom, you know. I have faith that I'll be able to be something, you know.
You are in a place where so many things are turning around in the opposite direction. You're on staff at the place you were trespassed from.
Yeah.
Just alone, that right there is incredible. Now a productive, influential, positive member of society. Thank God nobody gave up on you. Thank God people gave you a chance. Something that we skipped over, I'm just going to briefly mention because I know it. While you were trespassed, I heard stories from Michelle about Jim sneaking you food up to the corner to meet you and give you food still, even though you were trespassed. Because something that is to be said about my house is, like, even when we give up on people, you know, air quote, give up as it's perceived by people, you know, you gave up on that person, you kicked him out, or you kicked him to the curb. We meet them at the curb still.
Yeah.
Like, we still do things for people the moment they're willing to try. This place is one of the most incredible places I've ever been. And when I hear stories like yours, it reminds me, I already know that you can never look at somebody when they're stuck in their mess and be able to be like, yeah, they're going to make it or they're not. You don't know. But every time I hear stories like yours and others that have been on this podcast, I am reminded that you don't ever count anybody out. There is nobody too far gone.
Yeah. The least likely.
Yeah.
know?
And now here you are. I just want to encourage you, continue sharing your story everywhere you go. Anybody that will give an ear to listen to you, because there's power in your story. I have one last thing I want to ask you. What was the most impactful thing that you experienced at my house?
Like, at all, the whole time I've known my house. The continuous love and support. And I didn't, back then, I didn't know it, and I didn't appreciate it, and I didn't believe it, because I had never been loved like that before. Even my own family, I second-guessed that they loved me, just because, like I said, I used to mourn a relationship with my mom, like a Gilmore Girl, and my mom was very distant. She didn't really hug. She didn't really, say she loved us, so I mourned love. I sought for love, and I didn't believe it, because I had been given a bunch of false love. So, and then when I got into my recovery, like today, I was just telling my husband the other day, I was like, I've never been loved, for my birthday, I got celebrated, and not just like a gift or, but really embraced and appreciated, and not by just my husband and my kids, but by my job and by my coworkers, and that card meant the world to me, because part of my love languages is words of affirmation. And so it's to be, as a recovering addict, sometimes you forget, even no matter how long you're in recovery, that you are worth it, that you're making a change. And so when other people see it, even on the days that you forget it, and that's one thing that this agency has never, the people here, there's so much love and support. And today I get to accept it. Today I believe it.